What up everyone, my name is Matt and this is my review of LEGO's Dagobah Jedi Training. This is set number 75330 and it retails for $90 here in the US and includes exactly 1,000 pieces, which I think is kind of cool. This scene is of course from The Empire Strikes Back and represents that part where Luke is in the swamp on Dagobah training with Yoda. Before we get too deep into this, I want to start with the minifigures because there's one in particular that I think is super cool, so let's start with him. R2-D2 is not the star of this scene, but he might be the star of the set because he looks great with his double-sided printing, something we rarely see. But not only does he have printing on the front and the back, but both of those sides and the top are covered in mud, which looks really good, and this is the only set you're going to get this figure in. Next we've got Luke Skywalker in his training gear from Dagobah. So he's got on this tan tank top and these khaki cargo pants which look really great. I really love the printing we see on the legs here. Luke's hairpiece looks really natural and really great, way better than those earlier helmet heads we've seen in past sets. The expression we see on Luke here is one of focused concentration and it's perfect for the set. Turning him around to the backside, we see some interesting printed details on the backside of his tank top there, and once we lift up that hairpiece, we see his second expression, which is more of a strained and scared face. Finally, we've got Yoda, who looks great. It's the same minifigure we've seen before, but it still looks really good with his robes folded in the front with a belt going across. His head looks really great and is super detailed. Yoda includes short legs, which look perfect on him and help get that scale right between him and Luke. If we flip Yoda around to the backside, we see that there's some additional printing on his torso piece. I'll spend just a moment talking about the build experience for this set, which was actually way more fun than I expected. The black base with the silver trim pieces around the side is pretty much what we expect now from LEGO Diorama sets, but the way that the land is built up and you create these organic shapes for the landmass, I think was pretty interesting and cool looking. But mostly I think when I looked at the set, I saw the water, which looked really good, but looked also like a nightmare to build with like all those 1x1 tiles. I think there's between 1 and 200 1x1 tiles in this set, and it just looked like a pain in the butt to build. But luckily, I think the way that LEGO handles this, they sort of have you layer up some of these pieces one by one, and they do a really good job in the instructions of calling out where you're putting things, so that by the time you get to these 1x1 green translucent tiles, you're really just filling in the whole area, so you don't have to think too hard about where they go. And the result of that, in my opinion, looks fantastic. When you look at the water, you see that it gets darker as it moves away from the shoreline, which looks really good. Looking at that section of the wing that's protruding above the waterline of Luke's X-Wing, you know the very edge of that isn't completely covered, so you can see where it attaches to the base. That red and white striped piece on the wing is a printed piece, by the way, not a sticker, so that's really great to see. But all in all, I think they did a really good job of showing that wing sort of peeking out above the water. Looking at the exterior of this set, as one of LEGO's diorama sets for Star Wars, it of course includes the Star Wars plaque and a little quote from the scene. The quote we get on the front of this set is "Do or do not. There is no try." It's perfect for this scene and it really represents Yoda's frustration with Luke when he's being a big baby and he's all feeling sorry for himself and he's like, "Oh, I can't lift the plane, it's too big." And then of course Yoda being Yoda, he's like, "Hold my beer, son," and he picks up the whole plane, picks it up out of the swamp and sets it down, and Luke's like, "Oh wow, I can't believe it." Pretty epic. I really love the rounded edges and the way they've created an organic shape for the island that Yoda's hut sits on. Luke gets a little clear piece to allow him to hover while he's doing his meditation and training. Next to Yoda's hut, we've got a couple of boxes which are simple but look nice. On one of those boxes is the orange lantern that we see in that movie. On the other box, we've got a taller element with what looks like a yellow light on top. It really should be probably a clear blue trans piece. Not a deal breaker for me, I don't really care so much about that. I really like a lot of the plants we see in this set, from these olive green fiddlehead fern kind of things to the sticks and empty brushes we see poking up out of the swamp. They add a lot of detail and texture to the set that I think worked really well. Yoda's hut looks really good in my opinion. It feels very volumetric and rounded and natural and organic, and the way it's nestled into this tree behind it, I think looks fantastic. The scale looks really good. Yoda standing next to the entrance looks perfect in my opinion. Yoda's hut has two little holes or windows, one on each side, and they look really good here with that curved piece in the tan color. There's a chimney on the side with a little bit of white smoke coming out. It's on the same side as a little stove on the interior of Yoda's hut, so that's a nice little detail to see. If we peek at the interior of Yoda's hut, we see a little bed on the left. It's not quite big enough for him to actually lay down in that bed. Next to Yoda's bed, we see a little Jedi holocron, which is a pretty cool little detail. On the right side of the hut, there's a little stove area with a pot where Yoda's cooking some food. And tucked away neatly above the door on the back side, we see Yoda's lightsaber, so that's pretty cool. The way that Yoda's hut is sort of merging into this tree in a very organic way feels really cool and like they did their homework. The way that the roots overlap each other and curve down and have air and space between them feels really natural and great. I really like this tree a lot. LEGO used a combination of reddish brown and dark brown to make this tree, so it feels very natural and interesting and a little bit varied when you look at it. The dark green leaves and vines looked really good and add a lot of visual texture to this set and really helped us feel like a fleshed out tree. I actually really like how they extended a part of the tree's root over the base. It just feels very natural and sort of how it's growing over the set itself, like it's continuing to grow after you build it. Part of what I find the most interesting and fun about this set though is how good it looks from the back. You know, you're clearly not meant to view this set primarily from the back, but the way that they've used a lot of different types of pieces to create that tree, and it doesn't feel bad to look at the set in the same way that it sometimes does when you're looking at the underside of ships and you see all the negative studs. So props to the design team for making this look good from every angle. One final little detail we've got here is this green snake slithering his way out of the hut. I assume because he doesn't want to end up in that soup that Yoda's cooking. I think all of LEGO's Star Wars diorama sets are a little bit overpriced, some a lot more than others. But for $90 for this set, for how cool it is, and for that super awesome minifigure for R2-D2 with covered in mud and the dual-sided printing, I think this is definitely worth a pickup. I like the set a lot. And if you compare this set to something like the Trash Compactor, this seems way more interesting to me. If you like LEGO Star Wars diorama sets, but either you have this one already or it's just not really your thing, then you should watch my review of the Emperor's Throne Room, which is also a little bit overpriced, but is a really cool set. On the other hand, if you want to hear about a set that you definitely should not buy, then consider watching my review of the speeder chase scene, because oh boy. Alright, later nerds!